same very question that little Fatima asked, that why isn't anyone helping? Why is no one doing anything? But one thing that breaks my heart even more than that, that we have sort of become numb to all of this. We see it on social media, we scroll past it, and we have actually accepted the unacceptable. We have made the abnormal normal. Subhanallah. The Ummah is bleeding 1,000 wounds, and we are just, we don't even feel the pain anymore. The other day I saw a meme that, the guy was sitting on his computer, the caption was, the world is ending, and I'm finding what show should I win. So I felt like this is us. We see all this oppression happening in front of our eyes, and we are just chilling and relaxing. But today the reason why we are here is not to, I don't want you to feel depressed. I don't want you to feel guilty. Maybe a little guilty, but the purpose of why we are here today is to understand one thing, that the world, whatever things we are seeing today, whatever things are happening across the world today, these are not just series of unfortunate events, or this is how it is supposed to be. Whatever is happening right now in the Muslim Ummah, we have to understand the world runs on cause and effect. There is reasoning in this world. Things don't happen, or things are not like they are just supposed to be like. The situation we are in, things were not always like that. But today, what we see is a result of us rejecting the commands of Allah, the choices that we have made, and the systems of Allah that we have forgotten, we have abandoned, and His commands that we have neglected. So tomorrow we have one special event where we are presenting the theme, and also if I think for the theme tomorrow, it's better we understand the backstory. We go back in time to understand what actually happened, how that happened, what we need to do. So I'll begin with what happened, how it reached to this point that today we have a genocide, and we see it in full in front of our eyes. To understand Gaza, to understand Palestine, we need to go back in time, maybe to the 1800s. Even before I start with the 1800s, I would like to paint a picture of how the situation was like in the 1800s. So the Jews, they were an interesting group of people. They have been persecuted and marginalized for a big part of history. When their temple was broken by the Romans, by the Byzantine, they moved out. They moved out from the land, and they went all across Europe and all across the world. And so basically, if you see during the Middle Ages, the Jews were in the Europe, and they had a few problems. If you know, in the Middle Ages, Europe was a predominantly Christian society, and their usury, basically lending money on with interest, was not allowed. It was banned. But the Jews, they practiced usury, and they would lend money and charge interest on that. So what happens in a society where there is no interest is that people don't lend money that easily. The society works on a level of trust. If they see I can make my money back, I'll have a profit, then only they spend their money. Because if there is a loss, both parties have to bear the loss. But in the system of riba, what happens? The lender always makes more money. He keeps on compounding as well. So the Christian countries, this was banned, but the Jews practiced it. So what would happen would be, the Jews would go to a certain city, and then they would start lending out money. People would say, "Oh, easy cash. Let me make some money." They will take the cash, start a business, and do whatever. What would happen, in a few generations would be the Jews own everything. everyone owes money to the Jews, and this kept happening. And people would be like, you know what, these guys, we don't like them anymore. And then they would go to the regional lord, whoever was the responsible of that place, and they would expel them. They would move them out of their city. These were the expulsions. And if you see all across Europe, there were multiple expulsions, and they were marginalized, and they would call them pogroms, and they were tortured, massacred. Entire Jewish villages would be wiped out. Now we come to the Industrial Revolution, the Renaissance, and the French Revolution. Europe suddenly modernized. It adopted industrialism and secularism and you can say capitalism. Now, what happened was there were certain Jewish people who who were now suddenly became very rich and became very, you can say, elite. Because what they did, they basically became banks, the first banks of the world. Because of using interest, they got richer and richer, and they became so rich and so powerful that they were basically the federal banks of that time. When the industrial revolution happened, government came take money from them to fund wars, to make projects, to make factories. A prominent name would be Rothschild family. They were pretty prominent 16th century, and if you know, they were basically the reserve bank for Britain, for France, and they would give lots of money and they would make lots of money. So now when we come to the 1800s, the the whole image is like there the common Jews, the middle class Jews and the lower class Jews, they are still being marginalized and they're still being persecuted. And there is a, a group of elite, super rich, super influential Jews. And in the late 1800s, we come to a man called Theodore Huxley. He was a British journalist. He was a Jewish journalist, and he was a visionary man. He said, you know what, I've seen enough. I've had enough. I see my people are being tortured. So he said, the only solution that we have is that we need to make a homeland. Now let's pause here for a moment. Was this desire understandable? You know, you are being persecuted, you are being marginalized, and it's a human tendency to crave dignity, to crave justice. But that's not where the problem begins. The ask for a homeland is okay. The problem began when they talked about where to make that homeland. Initially, the plan A, the plan A was actually shockingly Uganda. They decided, okay, the British own a good chunk of land in Uganda, not inhabited by anyone. Let's go make a huge homeland there. There was plans to go in Argentina, different places. But you know, to bring change, you need power. And at the time, that ally was the British Empire. And the British basically suggested to choose Palestine. So there was the historical context, and the British themselves needed an ally in the Middle East, an outpost of the West and Middle East. So they choose that. Now, if we see Theodore Herzl Friday, he says, he specifically says that the indigenous population is an obstacle that has to be removed. This is his writing. So you see, this movement, the Zionist movement, since the birth of it, was about displacement, was about removing the indigenous population from their homeland. They said we want to make a homeland. They decided Palestine, and since day one, it was not about coexistence. It was not about peace. It was about removing them, splitting them away. That is the exact word that he used in his writing. Now, as I said, the Zionist movement could not have done this alone. They needed power. They needed an ally, a backing, and they found it in the British Empire. Britain, Britain had its own interests. in the Middle East, oil, trade routes, the Suez Canal, uh, world, they were fighting World War One, and after that they would need outposts in the West to use their resources. So Britain was looking for allies. And as I told you about the families like Rothschild families, these influential families, they were backing the British. They were basically funding Britain in World War One. So the Jews had upper hand in the negotiations with them. Now see, during World War One, the Ottomans they were opposing the British, and they were just fighting them. But even before they defeated the Ottomans, Britain made a promises, series of promises to secure alliances. One of those promises, 1916, the British and the French together, they sat down, two guys, one from Britain, one from France. The Sykes-Picot Agreement. How many of you know about that? You know what agreement? Sykes-Picot Agreement. Hmm? So this is two views, one British, one French, sat in a room during World War One. They haven't even defeated the Ottomans. And they sat down and came up with a secret deal to carve up the Middle East. They saw the map of the Ottomans in the Middle East, and they said, okay, you take this, you take that, I'll take that. We'll give this to the Russians, we'll give this to them. And they basically did that. Divided families, divided people who considered themselves brothers and sisters, and divided them amongst themselves. And if you go back, look at those lines, you will see a striking similarity in those lines and the map we see today. So you see who are the people who divided us, who was plotting and planning for more than 100 years now to divide us. And in 1917, just 1 year after that, there was a letter issued from Arthur Balfour, the Balfour Declaration, a letter from the British Foreign Minister to whom? To Lord Rothschild, a prominent Zionist leader. The letter had 67 letters, 67 words. And what it did, it promised that the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. So basically, a British general who never set foot in Palestine promised Palestine to a Zionist leader who both of them have never been to Palestine, never consulted the Palestinian people, and they did that. This is as if I come to your room, to your apartment today and say, you know what, this is my friend, now you come out, this is his apartment. This is actually what happened. Now, 1917, this promise was made, but the final name in the coffin was the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the fall of the Ottoman Caliphate. The Sultan Abdul Hamid, the last caliph, he, as long as he lived, he never sold the Palestinian people. He never, betrayed them. He said, Zionists made lucrative offers to buy land in Palestine. But he said, I won't give you an inch of Palestine. But once the Ottoman Caliphate fell, the Zionists started, the Israeli settlers came in, they started buying land, and, and then the Holocaust happened, Second World War happened, more and more settlers came in. Our Palestinian brothers, they were welcoming people, welcomed them as refugees in their country with open arms. But what happened was, what followed after, the British mandate was ending 1948. The British were moving on to Palestine, and the Zionist militias were armed to the neck. They were fully armed, and on that day, they call it the Israeli Independence Day, and the Palestinians call it the Nakba. 1948, when the British left, the Israeli militias captured and basically massacred 500 villages, 750,000 people became refugees in their own land, forced to move away from their homes where they were living for generations. And the world calls it the Independence Day for the Israelis. And here's what breaks my heart. The Ummah, the Muslim world at that time was too weak, was too divided, and too colonized. It could not do anything. They were powerless. They could not stop it. They couldn't do anything about it. So, what was the larger context? You see, brothers and sisters, what happened in Palestine wasn't an isolated event. It was a part of a bigger plan, a much, much larger plan. For over 600 years, the Ottoman Caliphate had been the shield for Muslims. It wasn't perfect, It was a shield for the Muslims. It protected them. It wasn't perfect. No government is perfect. But it was a unifying force. It protected the Muslims of the world. It became a voice on the global stage, unifying the Ummah, strengthening the Ummah, and speaking up for it. And you see, by the late 1800s, even the Ottoman became weak, and there was internal corruption, external pressure from European powers, and they failed to keep up with technology and military advancement, which left them vulnerable. And the European powers, they saw that. They saw that opportunity and they clenched it. Britain, France, Italy, Russia, all of them. They didn't just want to defeat the Ottomans. They wanted to carve up the Muslim world and ensure that it could never be united again, that it could never rise again. And the World War One was the final blow. The Ottomans were defeated. They sided with Germany, they lost. And 1924, the Caliphate was officially abolished. Now let me tell you what that meant for the Ummah. For the first time in all of Islamic history, first time in 1300 years, the Muslim Ummah had no central leadership. It had no political unity. It had no voice on the world stage. And into that vacuum came in the colonizers. They didn't just take our land, they took our system. They imposed secular government. They drew borders that divided us. They installed puppet regime, leadership that thought of their interests, not of the people's interests. And they made sure that we could be never united again. We could never be strong. We could never. Now, let me tell you what I mean by what I mean by the taught us new ways of life. You know, what Islam made everything and died silently. So you see the power of Islam is not allowed us to take to innovate. We had the golden age of Islam, where Muslim scholars, Muslim scientists, innovators, and they were the superpower of the world. They advanced sciences. I mean, if I go on naming things, I can sit for hours and hours. But when this was happening, when Islam was at its peak, Europe was in the dark ages. Europe was in a very, very dark place. No progress for maybe 500, 600 years. No intellectual progress. They Basically, the church stopped them from thinking, from innovating. The church wanted the people to be submissive, to not question them, to not become a threat to the people. And because of that, when in those dark ages and was basically on the global world stage, they were not that powerful. There was no high speed. There was no advancement in science. But when you come to 1600, 1700, suddenly there was a change. There was uprising. There was the French Revolution, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution. You know what the Europeans said? We have had enough. We tried the church and they took us into the dark ages.
I think that was me back then. Like I was using, like I went into the washroom, like the private one, right? Instead of pressing the lock, I accidentally pressed the emergency one. I don't know how to turn it off. Who do I tell? You see that light over there? You see that light inside the washroom? Yeah, this one inside. I think it was inside, but I don't know how to like turn it off. Press it.
I don't know who to tell either.
Yeah. I'll let security know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let security know. What happened? Huh?
He says, let's fight.
Yeah. Well, huh? No, I'll just tell security.
But let me ask you guys, is this the Islam that Prophet Muhammad established in Medina? Is this the Islam that the Sahaba fought for, that the Sahaba practiced and protected? Islam is a complete way of life. It governs how people worship, how people pray, but it also tells us how we do trade, how we govern, how we treat our parents, how we treat our neighbors, how we establish justice in society, how to organize life, how to organize societies. Islam is not just about rituals, it's more than that. When you say La ilaha illallah, what does it mean? There is no God but Allah. If you look at the meaning of the word ilah in the Arabic dictionary, you get ilah is basically the object of the word ibadah. So basically ma'bud, someone whom you worship. What is ibadah? Look at the dictionary.
Yeah, that was me, man.
Okay. What's your name, sir?
Rana. I pressed it accident.
That's
I
what
wanted
your
to lock it.
motivation was. Just like we have to submit the report.
Yeah.
The student ID.
I'm
Rana
alumni.
Okay.
I graduated.
991612551.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, bro.
Yeah. So is there a way to turn it off or what?
Let me ask the supervisor.
I pressed it by accident. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay. You just have to pull it.
Next time, just pull it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My bad. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
But the new God that we have created, among them, the most powerful, the most important is national. And the garment of national is the flag, anthem, the map, the line on the border, the lines on map that we have considered nation. Those symbols of that nation basically shroud the coffin of religion. Iqbal saw this, how nationalism would become a new idol. He saw this cancer before everyone else. How we would worship nation, how we would worship the flag, the borders, the anthem, instead of following Allah's command and instead of following what Allah said. We were told now you are Turkish, you are Arab, you are Pakistani, you are Indian, you are Egyptian, you are Indonesian. And we forgot that you are Muslims first. We forgot the Prophet ﷺ said in a Sahih Hadith, he is not one of us who calls to tribalism. He is not one of us who fight for the sake of tribalism. He is not one of us who dies following the waves of tribalism. What is nationalism if not glorified tribalism? People would be like, I fight for my tribe. I want to make my tribe the best tribe. Now instead of that, we just use nation state.
Yeah.
So I will die for my country. Idea is so potent. People are living their lives for their nation. People are dying for what it is. Just tribalism glorified. And the Prophet said, who lives his life in the name of tribalism for nation, for whatever, he is not one of us. On the day of judgment, Allah will not ask us which nationality you are. He will ask you, did you fulfill my command? And Allah warned us to and obey Him and His messengers, and do not divide among one another. If you do so, your strength will depart. Your the strength that we have given you, that will you will lose that. Now look at us today. 57 Muslim countries. Oh, I should not say Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries. So there's barely anything Muslim about there. Nearly 2 billion Muslims. 1 in 4 trillions of dollars in wealth, oil, gold, resources, and you are one of the most strategic locations on the planet. And yet we cannot stop the oppression of our own people. We can't defend Gaza. We can't defend the people of people of East Pakistan. We can't prevent Muslims from killing each other in Sudan. And on the contrary, a Muslim nation is actually fueling the conflict. Because we are divided into these new gods, this new god called nation state. Pakistan would help Palestine because they don't want to make America unhappy. Saudi won't call, call against China for what they're doing in Pakistan because they want the Chinese investment. Each nation protects its own national interest. And when that comes in front of what Allah has commanded, what Allah has asked us to do, what Allah has made sacred, we are choosing a nation instead of Allah's command. Instead of choosing our brothers and sisters, we are choosing to make the West happy. This this is what nationalism does to you. It makes you worship a piece of cloth and a line on a map. And it makes you care about that line on the map and care about that piece of cloth more than the Ummah, more than your brothers and sisters. And then we ask ourselves, why are we so weak? Why are we so divided? Why can't we help our brothers and sisters? Because we've accepted secularism, nationalism, and we have abandoned the commands of Allah to stay united, to help each other. We have abandoned the commands of Allah. So there is the hard truth. The hard truth. Islam is not just about personal piety or good character. Though all of that is important, a very important thing. But we have to understand Islam is a complete way of life. And so Rasulullah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fis-silmi kaffa. That all you who believe, enter Islam completely, not partially, not just in the masjid, not at your home, everywhere, not just when it's convenient, in every aspect of life, in economics, in politics, in government, in law, in every aspect of life, enter Islam completely without compromise. You see, the Prophet ﷺ wasn't just a spiritual leader, who gave good advice, he made dua. No, he was a head of state. He established treaties. He judged people. He organized society. He managed an economy. He led an army. He created a constitution, the Constitution of Medina. He built a civilization. But today, we have been fooled into thinking, that Islam and politics don't mix. Our parents tell us, don't talk about politics and religion. They say, just focus on the studies. Then don't think about this stuff. We have been fooled that Islam and governments don't mix. Islam is just a religion, and religion should stay out of public affairs. But who taught us that? The colonizers, the secularists. They wanted to weaken us. And it worked. Wallahi, it worked. We now have Muslims who say, I'm a Muslim, but I don't want the Sharia. As if, we can choose, and we can pick and choose and reject Allah's law. There are Muslims who say this. We have Muslims who are ashamed and afraid to talk about Islam as a form of government. Who, who, when it comes to talking about Islam as a complete way of life, about the Khilafah, about implementing Allah's deen on planet Earth, they are afraid of they are afraid, they are ashamed. But what extreme? They say if you talk about this for extreme, you are a radical. What's extreme to me? What's actually radical is accepting the status quo, accepting that 2 billion Muslims can't defend a 2 million Palestinians, accepting that we have no voice, we have no dignity in this on the world stage. That's extreme. Some of you guys are thinking right now, what happened? What he's talking about? This is too political. That's too extreme. I don't know if we can talk about this or not. But wallahi, let me be very clear. It's not my opinion, someone else's opinion. The obligation to work towards the establishment of Islam completely, the establishment of Khilafah, a united Islamic leadership that implements Allah's law is not my opinion. It's not any opinion of any guy. It is the consensus of all ulama in this ummah for over 1400 years. Imam al-Nawawi says, one of the great scholars of Islam, in his commentary in Sahih Muslim, that the Muslim must have an imam to establish the deen, to help the oppressed, to fulfill the rights and judge between people. If Imam Ibn Taymiyyah says, it is obligatory upon us to establish the Khilafah. It is one of the greatest obligations of the deen. In fact, there is no establishment of the deen except by it. And I can go on and on giving the opinions of different scholars who make it a first to do that. Allah says in the Quran, whoever does not judge by what Allah has revealed, then it is those who are the disbelievers. The Prophet said in an authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim, whoever dies without having a bay'ah to an imam dies the death of Jahiliyyah. What does that mean? You are still in Jahiliyyah, you are still in ignorance. If you don't leave the man-made systems behind, if you don't abandon the systems of oppression, systems that promote injustice in society, if you don't leave them behind and you follow and implement the system of Allah, you are still living in Jahiliyyah. This was Islam that came to remove oppression from this world, to remove the unjust, oppressing, man-made systems and ideology, and liberating us and making us follow the commands of Allah and the systems of Allah that are based on justice, free from bias. Anyway, as I said, this is not something optional. This is not something nice to have. This is an obligation. But we have abandoned it. We have forgotten it. We have been told it's impossible. We have been told it's outdated. We have been told it's too extreme. Let me tell you what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said the Imam, the Khilafah is a shield. Behind it, you find protection. Behind it, you fight. He said it's a shield. What is the consequence when you don't have a shield? When you don't have anyone to protect the Muslims? What happens is that there is no one to defend a husband. There's no one. We have nations that are friends with the enemy, who salute them and who say, you are the peacemakers, whereas they are the ones who are causing oppression. This is what happens when you don't have the Imam, when you don't have a shield to protect the Muslims. There's no one to stop the civil war in Sudan. We have Muslim nation actually fueling it. People who don't care about Sudanese life, only about their gold, only about their land, only about their resources. There's no one to liberate the Uyghurs. There's no one to liberate Kashmir. There's no one to stop so many civil wars that we have. There's no one to unify the Ummah. Instead, we have 57 nations, 57 separate religions, 57 countries competing with one another instead of using their resources together to fight the oppressor. This is what happens when we abandon Allah's command and we neglect his obligations and we adopt the ideologies that are man-made. And this is the corruption that we cause in this world. We have replaced Allah's system with, with democracy, with monarchy, with dictatorship. None of them, all of them, none of them can just right. Before democracy was it gives a voice to the people. And where was democracy when in 1991 the Algerian people elected the government? Islamic government.
The MSA event. Yeah.
Something for our interest, or that comes and talks and changes. It is as if we have a false sense of having a say, a false sense of having power. The system of Allah is not democracy, it's not dictatorship. It's unique. It's a unique system of government. The ruler is accountable to Allah and to the people. Law comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, from the divine, without any biases. Justice is for everyone, Muslims, non-Muslims. And the resources of the Ummah belong to the people, not to some corporation or corrupt elite. We saw just correcting what we talked about so far, went to many places. Talked about what happened, how the colonists came, they colonized us, they introduced us to the new ideas, which led us to neglect the greatest obligation in Islam that Allah has made obligatory upon. And because we have neglected that obligation, we have abandoned the system of Allah, we see things that are happening today. Allah says in the Quran, indeed, Allah will not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves. The Surah Al-Rad. The change starts here. It starts with us, with understanding, with accepting the responsibility, with rejecting the false system that the West has imposed on us, and returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not through violence, but through making a choice, through activism, through dawah, through organization, through intellectual revival, through rebuilding the Ummah from within. Just like the Prophet ﷺ did for 13 years in Medina. He established, before he went to Medina, he did that for 13 years in Mecca. Before he established the Islamic State, he built a Jama'ah, a group of people who were committed and dedicated. He built the people first. He changed their hearts and minds. He gave them a vision and organized them. And then, when time came, he established the state. That's our path forward. So basically, what do we do now? We We heard the wounds, we heard the history, what happened, and we now know the obligation. Do we just go back to our lives? Allah will fix it. And then we go back to our lives, back to still being humiliated, back to exams, back to assignments. The Prophet said, whenever you see an evil, stop it with your hand. If you're weak, you cannot do that. Stop it with your tongue. If you cannot do that, hate it means then hate it in your heart. And that is the weakest of Iman. We cannot change it with our hands yet. We cannot change it with our hands yet. At least we can seek a change it with our tongue through activism, through dawah, with education, with organization. And we should not reach a point where we are just hating things in our heart. But that is the weakest of Iman. And the Ummah right now doesn't need weakness. It needs strength. Brothers, sisters, especially all of us in this room are young people. We are the future. We literally are the generation that can, continue this humiliation, or we can restore the honor of this ummah. Some of you might be thinking, but brother, what can I do? I'm just a student, a single person. What can I do? Let me just tell you something about the Sahaba. They were also people like us. That Umar was a businessman, that Bilal was a slave, that Abu Bakr was a merchant. They were human beings like us, but they changed the world because they made a choice. They chose to stand for the right, for the haq, and they chose Allah over this dunya. So you still have a choice, and it depends what choice you make. Choice number one: seek knowledge. Ignorance is one of the biggest problems we face today. We don't know our history, we don't know our deen, we don't know what's happening in the world. We are still ignorant. You know, we don't we don't know what's going on in this world. We are so ignorant. The first thing that we should do is to seek knowledge, to understand, to read, to study. Not just understand, we should understand the faith deeply. Not just the faith of Gugu, how to pray. That is important. But expand your knowledge. How Islam works, how Islamic governance works, how Islam establishes justice in society. Understand the history, understand politics, understand the forces, the power brokers of society, things that are changing the world as we speak today. The second choice that you have is being together, being in a jama'ah, finding a community. Because we cannot do anything alone. Find Muslims who share the same vision, who want to build a community, join organizations, join movements who are working for Islamic revival. Start study circles, organize relief, take part in activism, support our brothers and sisters in any way you can. The early Muslims, the Sahaba, didn't change the world as individuals. They did it together as a form of a jama'ah. And I'll tell you a quote from Hazrat Umar. He says, there is no Islam without jama'ah. There is no jama'ah without imara. There is no imara without atara. There is no Islam without jama'ah, without being together, without being part of a community. And there is no jama'ah without imara, leadership. And there is no leadership without obedience, without ita'ah. Let's try to follow the advice of Rasulullah and stick together. choice that we have is that we engage in activism. Our voices matter. We think, what can I do alone? But our voices matter. We should raise awareness about the issues of the Ummah, about Palestine, about Uyghurs, about Sudan, organize protests, represent ourselves, use social media strategically, not just for memes, use it for things that are useful, to educate, to mobilize. And another thing that we have to do is that we have to revive the Muslim identity in every aspect of life. Not, not just don't compromise it with I will follow Islam here but not there. If you are studying law, ask how can I use this to establish justice? If you are studying medicine, how can I establish the If you are studying engineering, how can I build for the Ummah? Whatever it is that you are doing, ask yourself as a Muslim, as a part of this Ummah, how can I use this for the betterment of Muslims? Make every part of your life, everything that you do, a form of ibadah. People, whether was asking me to do a talk on balancing between deen and dunya. But is there really a balance in doing that? Is there a balance between deen and dunya? Allah says in the Quran, قل إن الصلاة نسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. Say that my prayer, my sacrifice, my existence and my death, everything is for Allah. मेरी जिंदगी का मकसद इस दीन की सरफराजी मैं इसलिए नहीं हूँ मुसलमान मैं इसलिए नहीं हूँ नमाज. The life that we have been given, we're not here to live our lives and retire, make some money, focus on our career, buy a house, get married, have children, retire, and then die. There's no vanity in dunya. Everything that you do in this dunya should be so that you can build your akhirah. You build your akhirah using your dunya. So whatever you do, just think of the bigger picture. How can I use this to help Islam, to help the Ummah? And the last, and the most important thing, be patient and have tawakkul. Because things are not easy. Things don't have an open mind. The decline of the Ummah has been going on for over a century. But the revival won't happen just in a year. But I am sure, have faith, that Islam will rise in our lifetime. And we have trust in Allah and Allah's promise. Allah says in the Quran, do not lose hope, nor be sad. You will surely be victorious if you are believers. This is Surah Al Imran. So I just want to end on hope. The Ummah is wounded. We are bleeding from 1,000 cuts. We have been weak for over 100 years. But we were down there before. How did the Ummah look after the Mughal invasion? People were saying Islam is finished. They didn't follow Islam in Baghdad. They saw what happened. They were like, I'm not sure if Islam can rise again. But what happened within that decade? The Mongols themselves accepted Islam. Islam was once again dark. During the Crusades, were divided. Infighting was going on. But then came Salahuddin Ayyubi, united the Muslims, showed them what their purpose is. He was able to recapture Jerusalem. Then he united the Ummah and we rose again. History shows us that Ummah has an incredible ability to rise from the ashes. Because this Ummah is not like any other. Allah has chosen us to carry His final life. And Allah does not abandon those who turn backward. The question is now, will you be part of this revival? Will you be like the Sahaba who sacrificed everything for their deen? Will you be like Salahuddin who spent his life rebuilding the Ummah, telling people who they were, reminding them of their purpose. Will you be like the scholars of the past who got involved in activism, who remained their lives, a huge chunk of life imprisoned? This is what it requires. If you want change, if you want revival, we have to struggle. We have to strive in the path of Allah. But how do we do that? Through education, through forming organizations, from making movements and calling out for the haq. We can do that, or we can be bystanders, scrolling through life, living our lives, watching the world burn, doing nothing. This is a choice that we have to do. But we have to remember one day on the day of judgment, Allah will ask us, what did you do? I gave you wealth, I gave you knowledge, I gave you resources, I gave you time, health. What did you do? I gave you opportunity. What did you do with it? Did you fight oppression? What will we say that day? I pray to Allah that grant us the courage to act, the wisdom to understand, and the unity to stand together, and the strength to revive the Ummah. I pray that Allah will pray Palestine, Kashmir, East Turkmenistan, and every land where Muslims are being oppressed. I pray that Allah forgives us for our shortcomings and accepts our efforts. And I pray that one day, maybe in our lifetime, inshallah, this Ummah rise again, strong, united, guided by the Quran and the Sunnah. A mercy. Yeah. That's all we can pray for. So you guys have any questions before we end, before we conclude? Any questions, concerns you want to ask? Any QCC? Questions, comments, concerns? No questions? That's what I'm saying, bro. You don't have to ask. Just ask him. Yeah. Okay. I tell you. Sudan. Yeah. So what's happening in Sudan? Basically, you look back 10 years ago, 2016, first of all, Sudan was split into two countries, Sudan and South Sudan. So since Sudan was liberated, there was, wallahi, the way Europeans view border between people and they basically divided them, that was their play was divide and rule. They left people in a way that they keep infighting and they cannot see the bigger picture. They keep doing that so that they can use their resources for their benefit. And wallahi, we're seeing the repercussions of that all across the Muslim world, not just in Sudan. And the war in Sudan has been slowly happening since last 2-3 years. We were so focused on Palestine that we ignored that. Right now, what's happening? There was a coup that happened 2023. There was not an elected government, it was basically, you can say, an oppressive. Yeah, so there was basically an oppressive government there. Then there was a military coup, which was orchestrated by foreign powers basically. A coup where the military there was a private militia called the RSS. So the Sudanese armed forces, they did the coup, and they're supposed to have new elections in the coming year so that they can establish a democratic government. What ended up happening, they didn't follow that. They did the coup, and there was now, of course, there was a private militia. They have nothing to do with the army, private, is like a private group of people who have army. Okay, so I will just ask the first question quickly and then
Inshallah, we can have like a half round.
so what ended up happening is RSF said, we don't want this coup, we don't want current abuse. And UAE, actually UAE gets 90% of the gold from Sudan, and it's used in the UAE gold market. UAE is one of the biggest gold market today. And so Sudan was called the food basket of Africa. They have the Nile River, one of the most fertile lands in all of Africa. They have gold, they have a lot of resources, some oil reserves as well. So Sudan is a country that's supposed to be thriving, but because foreign countries, for their own benefit, to capture all their resources and to benefit for them, they want complete control. And that's why we see the civil war today between the SAS and the RSF. RSF backed by UAE, and SAS, people say is backed by Russia and stuff. But I believe both parties are basically backed by America. Both parties, as I said, are backed by America. Because America wants to divide it into another part, I believe, so that they can have better control of the resources. And UAE is basically an American ally. They don't care about Muslims. They don't care about the sanctity of blood that Allah has placed. Allah says, the Prophet said in front of the Kaaba that the blood of a Muslim is more sacred than the Kaaba. And you see a Muslim country orchestrating a civil war in another Muslim country, not caring about their sanctity, about the rights they have over their brothers. This is what nationalism does. What the ideologies, the isms that we have adopted, the best they do to us. And it is important that we let go of these man-made systems and we return back to the system of Allah. If we want justice, if we want peace on this earth, we have to go back to the system of Allah to the way Allah has commanded us to do. If I want you guys to take this away from me, start learning, start looking at world politics, try to understand who are the power brokers of society, how they have managed to keep us divided and weak, and try to learn about Islam. Go through the seerah, understand how Prophet built and established. Get a place, listen to scholars who understand the reality of today's time. Scholars who are not just know about Islam, they need to go to people who understand fiqh, but we need to go to scholars who understand politics, scholars who understand the nuances of societies we are living in today. Inshallah, now we have to end, so inshallah we'll end, but inshallah we can keep the continuation, the we'll continue discussion on food, chai, samosas.
So, inshallah, Jazakallah khair, brother, for everyone for coming. Just as the brother mentioned, that lots of things are going on, and ignorant person cannot survive. If a person remains ignorant, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that the information of batil is going to attack us. And this information, we're going to take it as the truth. So, for this not to happen, we need to go to scholars. We need to understand what is the reality and what is going on. Furthermore, like the brother mentioned, that action needs to take place. We're the next generation. There's two steps that could partake. One step is either that we can continue and prolong in this activity and further be humiliated the way we are, or number two, we partake the path of the Sahaba. we partake in the path of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we take the path of dignity, we take the path of honor, we take the path of success. These are the two pathways. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the both meaning. Amma yatasa'alun. About what are they asking one another? Anin nabil azim. About the great news. Alladhi hum fihi mukhtalifun. That over which they're in disagreement with one another. Kalla saya'lamun. Soon they're going to know. Thumma kalla saya'lamun. Then no, soon they're going to know. Meaning, there's people, they're disputing over whether judgment day is going to happen or not. But we know that judgment day is a reality. We know life is temporary. People will dispute with you about everything. But the one thing they will not dispute with you regarding is that death is a certainty. So my friends, death is going to happen. We are going to lose our lives anyway. So there is no point fearing. There is no point being scared. What we need to do is take a step. Take a step for the sake of Allah. We take one step for the sake of Allah, Allah comes running towards us. And like the brother mentioned, there are practical, actionable steps. These practical, actionable steps are the following. That if you have the ability to stop the evil with your hands, this is the first step. Whatever evil is transpiring, stop it with your hands. Like the brother mentioned, we are not of those people who just know evil and know it's bad in our heart. This is the weakest position. This is the weakest position. This is a position of humiliation. If somebody were to take over your home, what are you going to do? Go straight to the third step that I know this is bad in my heart? No. You're going to stop it with your hands. So, regarding the entire Ummah, this Ummah is our family. This Ummah, the children of Palestine are my children. The women of Palestine are our sisters. The brothers in Palestine, they're all of our brothers. So we need to take them as such. And we need to take these steps. So, my friends, we need to follow in the way of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we need to follow in the way of the Sahaba. We need to stop evil when we see it. We need to speak out against evil. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He will help us, He will guide us, and He will lead us to the straight path. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to act upon and practically do what we learn. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase and enhance our learning. So inshallah we're gonna have a little break. And in this break, there's going to be food that's going to be offered there. It's a buffet. So inshallah, we're going to have chai, which is Riyadh Bhai's favorite. And we're going to have samosa, which is Amro's favorite. So inshallah, everybody will get your samosa and chai like you want it. Inshallah. So who's excited for samosa and chai? Raise your hand. No one? Okay, guys, whoever doesn't raise their hand isn't getting it. Okay, mashallah. Two hands, two samosas for Ayan Bhai. Mashallah. So inshallah, brothers,